Yeah, we have one last lesson when we're talking about triangles and their sides and angles and how they're related. And we are going to decide if a triangle is an acute triangle, an obtuse triangle, or a right triangle by using Pythagorean theorem if we know how long the sides of the triangle is. So reminder that Pythagorean theorem is related to right triangles, but we can also use it to determine if a triangle is acute or obtuse. And if we have a right triangle, the side across from the right angle we call the hypotenuse. And when we are using the Pythagorean theorem, we give it the letter C. And then these other two sides we call legs of a right triangle, and we give them the letters A and B. It doesn't matter which one is A and which one is B. But the hypotenuse is always the longest side, and that's because it's always across from the biggest angle, and we've talked about that. The biggest side is across from the biggest angle, and vice versa, when we were ordering sides and angles and triangles. And so the hypotenuse being across from the 90-degree angle means it's always going to be the longest side, and we give that C. And so the relationship in a right triangle is that if we take A squared, my one leg squared, and add that to B squared, my other leg squared, it's going to be equal to the hypotenuse squared. And so if a triangle is going to be a right triangle, then that relationship has to exist. If I take the two shorter sides, square them, and then add them, it should be equal to the longest side squared. If both sides of those equations are equal, then this thing is a right triangle. However, if that's not true, then we have some sort of other triangle. If we do A squared plus B squared, and that part of my relationship is bigger than C squared, then it's an acute triangle. If I use this relationship and A squared plus B squared is smaller than C squared, then it's an obtuse triangle. And we can look at this the other way. We might want to look at just C squared and decide how it's related to the other side. If C squared, if my right side is equal to the left side, then it is a right triangle. If my right side is smaller than my left side, it's acute. And if my right side is bigger than the left side, then it's obtuse. So if C is a lot bigger than the other two, it's probably going to be an obtuse triangle because the angle across from it will be big. So let's put this into practice. You should always start by writing the relationship that exists. And because right now I don't know how the left and the right side are equal or are related, I put a question mark in between them. And so we have to decide which side is the longest. If we put 4 root 7 into the calculator, we would find that it's smaller than 16. 16 is our biggest side. So that is going to go in for C. And let's use parentheses always. We're going to square that. The other two sides are A and B. It doesn't matter which is which. I'll make 11A, and we're going to use parentheses here so we don't make mistakes. And then 4 root 7 is B. And let me show you how we can put this into Desmos to see what the relationship is between the left side and the right side of the triangle. So I'm going to use Desmos to help me. I'm going to do 11 squared, and I can do that in parentheses. This A to the second power will square whatever you have in parentheses there. And then I'm going to use parentheses again to put in 4 root 7. And close my parentheses, and then I can square that. And you can see it's doing the work for me. It's telling me the left side of my equation is 233. And then I can do 16 squared, and I get 256. And now I can decide which side is bigger. What really I want to look at maybe is the right side. I want to decide, is c squared the same as a squared plus b squared? Then it's a right triangle. Is c squared larger? Then it's an obtuse triangle. Is c squared smaller? Then it's an acute triangle. In this case, c squared is larger. Our word for large in triangles, when we're talking about their names, that means they are obtuse, and so this is an obtuse triangle. C squared is larger, so it's obtuse. So I'm going to go ahead and make a note here. When c squared is larger, it's obtuse. When c squared is smaller, it's acute. When c squared is equal, then it's right. So let's try another one. Again, always starting with this a squared plus b squared question mark c squared. Of course, if I know this thing is a right triangle, then I'm going to make that question mark an equal sign. But right now, we don't know if it's a right triangle. It might look like one, but we're going to make sure. If I put 8 root 3 into my calculator, it gives me 13.8. 13.8 is less than 18, so 18 is my largest side. That means that's going to be C. If it's a right triangle, it's going to be my hypotenuse, but we don't know if it is yet. So the other two can be A and B. I'm going to use parentheses again, so that when I go ahead and I use Desmos to help me out here, I can use parentheses on Desmos, and I will make sure that I don't make a mistake. So we can go check both sides here. I don't know why that keeps doing that, sorry. I have 8 squared and 8 root 3 squared. So I'm going to do 8 squared, parentheses, plus, parentheses, 8 root 3. And then to make sure that I'm not typing under the parentheses, I got to arrow over, close up my parentheses, then square that thing, and I get 256. And then I'm going to do 18 squared and get 324. I'm going to compare c squared to my other side, so I'm going to see, is my right side bigger, smaller, or equal? In this case, it is larger, so I can write larger. And when c squared is larger, that means this must be an obtuse triangle. So let me do one more example and be consistent. Again, I'm going to keep using a squared plus b squared question mark c squared. 15 is going to be my largest side. If you can't see that right away, you can put root 161 in the calculator and see what that's equal to. It's going to be smaller than 15. Trust me. So I'm going to plug in 15 on the right. And then on the left, I'm going to have 8 squared plus the square root of 161 squared. That's a 1 in front of there. There we go. Again, using parentheses so we don't make a mistake. Question mark in the middle. We don't know what the relationship is yet. So I'm going to do 8 squared plus root 161 squared. Be consistent. Use your parentheses so that when you get to the square root, you don't make a mistake. You need to use parentheses here to make sure that we get that square root squared properly. And then I'm going to do 15 squared. And you can see they're both the same. Both sides turn into 225. That means both sides are equal. And that means that this is a right triangle. Therefore, that biggest side, 15 kilometers, was my hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle, so that is a 90-degree angle. It looks like one. We've confirmed that it is because we've shown that this is a right triangle. So go ahead and give these two a try. Put your answers in the box, whether it is a right triangle, an acute triangle, or an obtuse triangle. Then you can check your answers. If you get either of them wrong, that's a good time to raise your hand, show us what you did, so we can see where the mistake might be. So you should have gotten the first one to be acute, the second to be obtuse. Again, if you did not get one or both of those correct, please do raise your hand, and we'd love to sort out where the mistake might be. As always, there are practice problems. Be sure to do the practice problems. Be sure to ask for help as soon as you get stuck. Don't wait till it's too late. If you get stuck on the first one, ask for help so you don't get stuck on the next one. Take your time on these, and good luck.